Good morning, everybody. Ben Jones again, Badger from Bronson Coffee Roasters, hanging out in my coffee workshop. We've got, it's Monday morning, got the setup. We're going to make some coffee today. It's 28th day of December 2020. This will be my last video for 2020. When I see you back, it will be the new year. So, I am well known around my little coffee circle for not really being, they accuse me of disliking the V60. It's not that I dislike the V60, it's just that I don't often use it, mostly because I haven't had one for a lot through my early coffee development, and there's no real reason to not use a V60. It's a great little brewer. So today we're going to wrap up 2020 by brewing on the V60 because I have to round out the year with a fair look at all the coffee brewers. The V60, it's a Japanese company called Hario. This is a mug top brewer, so it sits atop your mug. We have the hole in the bottom. The brew chamber itself is it's a cone. It's not elongated. It has just a uniform cone, so much more like the Chemex in shape. What really so that's one of the things that differentiates it from the bee house. The bee house is has that elongated cone. It's kind of dirty. I didn't clean it very well yesterday. And it has just the two holes in the bottom, so that restricts the flow. The V60, very large hole in the bottom. You can really let some coffee flow through there. Also, it has these incredibly aggressive channels along the inside that helps to lift the filter off the brew body and increases the exchange of water and air to allow for faster flow. They call it the V60 because if you pulled out your protractor, you could measure that this is a 60-degree angle, which makes it an equilateral triangle, because that's fun geometry. The basic use of V60 is very similar to any of the other pour-over brewers that we would be using. We do need to get the special V60 filters. These come in both the white and brown versions, and just like any of the other filter manufacturers that are of quality, the white is going to be an oxygenated bleaching, not a chlorine chemical bleaching. The Melita styles, I will fold that tab to help this seat better into the brewer. Open it up, and it just sits right inside. With these, something that I have found helpful is a pre-wetting of the V60, just because that will then help the paper set a little bit better. And as we now hold it there, we can pin it. And I'm not very good at this, so it's a little bit all over the place. There we go. Rinsing this also helps to pin the paper filter into the brewer. And ideally, we would have it sitting perfectly and uniformly all around. There we are. All right, not gonna make this mistake again. I have my rinse water. It smells ever so slightly of paper. The V60, or the Hario filters are pretty clean. They're gonna do a nice job of rinsing clean, but if you don't rinse it, you might not notice much paper taste if you're not susceptible to that. If you're running, let's say our Italian roast or one of our blends that has the dark component, it might just kind of overpower that. If you add milk and sugar, you might not notice it. So if you're not a fan of rinsing, you can set that aside. It's gonna swipe that. There we go. Sorry for the smudge. All right, so just like all of our other pour-overs, I'm making a single cup. This is my standard diner mug that I like to drink from. With that, I'll use 19 grams of coffee. I'm grinding this on the coarsest side of what I would use for drip. Some people like to take it down even finer, but I like to run with this really coarse. It's still a medium grind, but it's the coarsest side of the medium scale. on my Brata grinder, 10, 12, 14. I'm into 16 on that one there. So we'll talk in later videos about how to kind of manipulate the profile with the V60. You can change your flow rates, you can change your pour rate to enhance or dilute acidity. You can increase or diminish body depending on how you pour. The V60, I will say, if I have a criticism of it, it's only that it's much like driving a finely tuned sports car. Not that I've ever done that, but from what I hear, you have to do things just right. You can get from here to there. It might be a little bit of a bumpy ride if you're not good with the clutch, but if you know how to use it, you can really get the most out of it. It's just a little less consistent than some of the other brewers. The B House, for example, with just the 2 small holes, flow restriction helps to kind of calm things down and create a more uniform brew process. But this one, we get to do a lot more of the control as the coffee maker, as the barista. So to start it, I've just got it on my scale here. There are a few different thoughts on what you ought to do with this. Some people, they'll start right in the middle with a little divot. That's okay. I'm going to do that today just for fun. So I just put a small, about a dime-sized little crater in the coffee. I'm going to use that as a target for my bloom. So I'll just add a little bit of water, and then just let that start to soak in. There we are. And just add enough water to get everything wet. And if you can see here, I have some large and aggressive bubbles, so I'm just going to pop that dry spot, help that water to get in there. That's an option. You don't have to do it. I've started doing it lately just because I have the bamboo skewer right there. But all right, if you are using a scale, you roughly double your dry coffee grounds mass, and that's how much water you use. So 19 grams coffee up to 36 grams water for the bloom. Just give it 30 seconds. Now what I'm doing is I'm just going to come and I'm going to start introducing my brew water. With the V60, I just start in the middle where I did that little dimple to start. So kind of start at the bullseye and just make slow circles outward. Then I do the same thing that I do with the B House. Bring the level up a little bit, let it drip, then bring it back up and let it drip. Try to maintain a low water line. Total brew water, I want to use about 300 to 320 grams of water. And then once I get down a quarter inch or about half inch, just go ahead and add more water, bring it back up to that high water line. With the V60, because of the very aggressive channels, you might see a little bit of coffee clinging to the edge of the filter. I want to avoid pouring directly against the filter and the wall because that water will slip right through the filter and then bypass the brew and dilute our coffee. That doesn't mean never do it. Like if you feel like you have too much coffee up top, just go and give it a quick little side rinse. That'll reincorporate those grounds. But basically you're just pouring water back over it. Brew time on these, depending on your grind size, roast profile, you should be hitting about 2.5 minutes on the fast side, and as long as 4 minutes. So if I was brewing, if you go to batterofcoffee.com and you picked out organic French, the Italian roast, if you were getting perhaps the Bohemian blend or the Capital blend, those both would be great on the faster side, 2.5 to 3 minutes with a moderate drip size grind. With our single origin coffees, when we want to really highlight the unique traits of the origin, we can push that brew time out, and depending on all the other factors, we're hitting 3.5 even as many as 4 minutes. This is, of course, the Colombia Las Brisas. I'm going to be hitting about a 4-minute brew on this just because that's the one I like. Quick rule of thumb on grind time and that. So small grind size needs a small grind time. As you increase in the grind coarseness, you want to go with a longer brew time. It takes more time for the flavors to be pulled from the particle. With roast profiles, the more time it spends in the roaster, the darker it gets. We can shorten the time at the brew. We're just right there at 4 minutes. I'm just going to pull that off. Cleanup for the V60 is incredibly easy. We just will collect and compost our filter. And then I'll just give it a little rinse to rinse off any loose coffee there. Then we hang it to dry, or set it out to dry. Once in a while, you can send it through the dishwasher if you're inclined, or a little soft sponge in hot water. Do it by hand. I'll wash mine. I don't use any soap on it. Just a little soft sponge. See, Shandy has a question. So how do I store my unground coffee? So whole bean coffee. There are a lot of different ways to store coffee. I'm out here in the workshop. The temperatures do fluctuate a little bit. It gets kind of chilly. And honestly, I just keep it in the bag that I bought it in when I buy my my beans. Just make sure I roll the top down really well, close it, and then clamp it. That reduces enough exchange of air. I really want to avoid any moisture getting into the coffee. I want to avoid open exchange of air, get an oxygen flowing over it. There's some great products. Give me half a second, right back. There we are. All right. So I have this little thing here. This is just a stainless steel canister, and then it has like a vacuum valve lid on it. When you push it down, it will push the air out. I gotta leave that up for the valve, so you probably can't hear it, but it's expelling air. If you're going to be storing coffee, this is a decent way to do it. Really great way at preventing exchange of air. I don't like to freeze my coffee simply because there's some challenges with opening and closing the freezer. It'll thaw. If you do freeze it, it's best to put it as far back into the freezer as you can. And then the trick is to only allow what you're going to use that day to thaw. So that requires dosing out your daily dose. That requires not having so much stuff in the freezer that you can't just easily pull it. There's just some challenges with freezers. My favorite thing to do when it comes to storing coffee is, if you can get a hold of a week to 2 weeks supply of coffee at a time, typically within that realm, it's going to be fantastic. 3 weeks out, not a problem. If you're doing espresso, then we're starting to worry about freshness beyond 2 weeks. But for drip, I'm not worried 3 weeks to a month out. In fact, I order my coffee in 3 week supplies. So that's how I do it, and I just keep it right here. Also, if you, I have another bag. This is my last bag of fresh and unopened coffee. Leaving them in the unopened bag is going to really extend their life. It's one of the great reasons I like that we've gone down to the 12-ounce bags. So there you have it. I do have now, concerning the freezer situation, I need to mention, I have a coffee friend who used to be well, he still is a scientist, but he used to work at MIT, and he had a walk-in Sub-Zero freezer, and him and all of his lab buddies were really into coffee, so they commandeered a decent piece of that Sub-Zero. I'm talking 13 below zero, that they kept coffee in. And if you have temperatures like that where you can quickly freeze it and keep it well below freezing, I've heard that you can really extend the life of your coffee. But a home freezer, I would be hesitant. I also heard a story of there was a gal who she bought like, I don't know, 15 or 20 pounds worth of coffee all at once. And the people at the shop were like, what are you gonna do with this? And she says, oh, I'm gonna take it home, and when I get it to where I'm going, I'm gonna put it straight into the freezer, and that's how we're gonna keep it fresh. And they were trying to talk her into buying smaller batches, and she's like, well, I'm doing a 6-month stint in Antarctica, so I can't really get daily shipments or even weekly shipments. So in those situations, if you don't have access to a cafe or to receive shipment, by all means, freeze your coffee. But again, keep it frozen until you need a thaw. This is a good cup of coffee. I feel like I'm supposed to say something clever for 2020. As time passes, we're still people who need people around us, and who we need to give, extend, and receive grace, patience, and understanding. And something that really makes that easier is a good cup of coffee. So, cheers to 2020 for all that it was. I will see you back in the new year. Don't know what I'm going to do yet. I might talk more about the V60, how to enhance or decrease acidity and or body. Do some flavor profiling. Anyway, good to see you. Take care.